So today I'm on my way to work from a different place, from Badrington, and I want to talk about shares a bit. Shares are an interesting thing, and if you're in the startup scene, it's very tempting to give out shares to employees because that's what all the startups do. It's kind of almost expected in startups. In fact, if you're in Silicon Valley, for example, I don't think you can really get away with running a startup and not giving shares or options or all that sort of stuff. And it's important not to just copy this model out of Silicon Valley and just apply it outside, because it doesn't necessarily work. I think with the typical startup employee in a place like Silicon Valley, you probably have a certain sense of understanding that, you know, the business could be $1 billion worth and you might get rich from this business and so on, and so people actually care and they want to see the shares as a kind of method for getting access to that wealth in case the business really does well, and then they feel very motivated to work on the business and they feel like they're owners of the business and so on. The argument outside of Silicon Valley tends to be that you want to give those shares to make people feel empowered, that like they're owners of the business and so on. And if they're really deep in the startup scene, that may well work. Although if they're smart and skeptical, they may well think, well, you know, this is not Silicon Valley. The chances that this business is going to exit for Google size is extremely slim. I mean, it's slim enough in Silicon Valley. In London, you can pretty much bet your left hand. You can pretty much bet your left hand that the startup you're working for is not going to be worth $1 billion anytime, ever. So people are naturally more skeptical of that kind of delusion, let's call it what it is. And so the goal of making people feel like they're owners of the business is not necessarily that clearly achieved by just giving out shares. I've done this before in events. I've asked them, so what's would you feel that you're an owner of the business if you own 0.1% of the business? Nobody raised their hands. What about 1%? Nobody raised their hands. 5%? Nobody raised their hands. The point at which most people seem to feel like they actually own the business is about 20%. Now, at that kind of rate, you can't afford very many employees. So what this means is that shares is a kind of shortcut to making everybody feel like they own the business. Something that really works outside of Silicon Valley. So you need something else. Luckily there is something else, which is to actually run a company where people are involved in the decision making. They are part of running the company. It is their business as well. Kind of what I was talking about with maturity yesterday, and what I'm talking about with open cultures all the time. These are all about getting people to feel like they are in control of the business. They are able to make decisions. It is their business, basically. So what I would suggest as a method for building companies outside of Silicon Valley, rather than just giving shares left, right and center in the hope that somehow people are going to feel like they own the business because of that, instead focus on learning how to build a company where people naturally feel like they're part of the business, that like they're really an important part of the business, like they're treated like human beings, that they have full transparency over the business, that they can make important decisions. Get them really involved in the running of the business and caring about the fate of the business without the shares. And once you figure out how to get people interested and involved, then you can look at the shares as a kind of validation of that and allow people to buy into the business as well as a validation of that. And that's my thought for the day. Hope you find it interesting. Bye.